Okay, so on this week's episode, I'm so proud to be able to be talking to Jordan. How are we doing there?
Oh, hello. That's excited to be here. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you that question that you probably get all the time. Why is there a PH in Jordan?
Yeah, that's like the number one question I think that whenever I do podcasts, people ask me that.
Yeah, sure.
No, you're fine. It's not a super interesting story. I was thinking about it. I should come up with a different story every time and then I'll remain a mystery. That'll be kind of interesting. But no, I used to teach theater and I would audition kids and things like that. And so one of the things I did way back in the day was we would do audition workshops, and we always laughed at a lot of these kids in the United States that their parents were trying to have them have an original name but not sound bizarre, I guess. And so you would have a lot of kids that are like, my name's Tiffany, but it's spelled Tiphanniy or something, and you're like, what? That's not how you spell that. And so the joke is that we would do these audition workshops, and my coworker would be the auditionee, and I would walk in, and she's like, Jorphdan, and I'm like, oh, the PH is silent. And so, flash forward like 10 years, I think, and it was this ongoing joke that we had. So it was just kind of an inside joke with my friends. And then I was like, well, I want to handle for the internet. I don't really know what I'm doing. I think my Twitter was already established as that because I was like, I'll make a Twitter back in, 2010 and I'll think it's funny, but I never used Twitter. And then when I was trying to like get this going, so I just thought it would be unique and stick out, I guess, was the hope. But in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best idea because a lot of people are like, and I've met other people at conventions and everyone refers to me as Jorphdan as instead of Jordan because they just read your name all the time. They don't interact with you. And I was like, live and learn. I don't know. I'm not rebranding yet. So.
Well, I imagined this kid bullied and thinking, oh my God, why did my parents give me a PH Jordan? And then thinking, well, he's owned it. He's grown up and he's like, this is your brand now. And that singles you out from every other Jordan on the planet. As soon as you said PH is silent, it's like, yep, D&D.
Yeah. And there's so many Jordans. And I won't give my last name, but I have a very common last name as well. And so it was like, I need to stand out. So yeah, PH is silent. So it's fun.
So for anyone who is watching my D&D channel and thinking, who is this guy? Can you tell us who you are? Why I've got you on?
Yeah. Well, hello, I'm Jordan with a silent PH in the middle. And I run a YouTube channel that's just Jordan with a PH in the middle. And it's about Dungeons & Dragons lore. So when I was getting into Dungeons & Dragons, I realized that the worlds of the Forgotten Realms and Eberron and kind of these like established settings were very complex and had a lot of history to them. And I thought that was a deterrent for a lot of dungeon masters, that they would be like, oh, I can't run a Forgotten Realms game because it's so, expansive. So I just wanted to make lore videos. So the idea was to make like little 5 to 10 minute videos on a bit of lore to help me understand it. And then on the other side is to help other DMs and to get ideas. So it's just a lore channel focused on the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons. I've done other videos, like since it got more popular, I started doing DM's Guild reviews and things like that and other supplements that I like. But for the most part, it's just a bunch of Spelljammer and Forgotten Realms and Eberron lore. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I discovered you, it was like 4 years ago. And obviously, like you say, me and my son get into it. And we're thinking, okay, we're going to play Horde of the Dragon Queen, right? Who's Tiamat? So straight away, your videos popped up. And who's the Demon Lords? Your videos popped up. And it was like, oh, we'll watch this guy because he seems to know all the hard stuff, just like you say. So the channel's working. And it's a real difficulty when you're picking up your first module and maybe Vecna's mentioned or Strad. And you're like, your players might know more than you. That's the danger.
Yeah.
You say something and they go, well, hang on, isn't Tiamat in Avernus? Isn't
Yeah. No, and it is. It's confusing. You're like, wait, so she's a dragon, is she the god of dragons? Is she imprisoned in hell? Like, and then a lot of that is like, do I even need that information to run the adventure? Like sometimes you don't, or maybe you're coming up with an adventure yourself. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm glad that it's working. So,
yeah. So starting off then, what was your intro to D&D? I get a feeling you've been with it for a long time.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. I guess I give off that vibe, but I didn't start playing till I was in my very early 30s. So I'm 40 now, but I grew up playing the like Neverwinter Nights video games and the PC games and the Baldur's Gates and things like that. So I had a familiarity with D&D, but I was raised in such a small town in the United States that there was nobody who played Dungeons and Dragons, or no way for me to really get those books. Like I could get software when we would take trips out there, and so I had no idea that it was kind of like a board game. But I loved fantasy worlds and things like that. And then flash forward, I'm now, in my 30s, and I was in a play, and and one of my fellow actors we were just talking about, things we were into as a kid, and he was like, "Oh man, like you've never played Dungeons and Dragons?" And I was like, "Oh no, like I just, he's like, "You would love it. Like you especially, I could just tell."
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm going to organize a game for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so we kind of talked to the cast, and that was the start where I thought this was probably bigger, or going to be big going forward, not only in my life, but just in general, because here you have a whole bunch of like 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds in this show together. And I think the whole cast, which I would not have thought some of them were as nerdy as me, the whole cast was like, "Well, I want to play. Oh, that sounds really cool. Yeah, I've always wanted to try that." And it's like the minute the opportunity was there, everybody wanted to try it, but nobody was really willing to bring it up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so this guy, he's like, "Well, I'll throw a game together." So I remember 4th edition was out at the time, and I was confused why we weren't playing the latest edition, thinking that Dungeons and Dragons was just a refined process that you picked up like whatever the latest edition was because it had the most current rules. I didn't really understand that 4th edition and 3rd edition were a complete breakaway from the earlier ones. But he grew up playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons from TSR. And so he called his friend. His friend has been his DM for a long time. They threw together a game. I think there were like 12 of us at the table that first night. It was like way too many people. And he was overwhelmed. He was like, "I don't know." So that got scaled back to about 8, I think, the next time we played. And yeah, we played AD&D, and I was a gnome wizard, and we kind of just went through a typical dungeon. But boy, I was hooked from the very beginning. And so we played through that. It lasted, I don't know, like 5 sessions maybe. And then the DM had to go somewhere. Our play was done, and so we weren't really like able to meet as regularly as we were. And I realized then that I'm like, if I want to play this, I need to start being a dungeon master. So I started listening to podcasts. The Acquisitions Incorporated podcasts were out, and I was doing that, and then picked up some 4th edition books, and we just sat down and started playing, and that lasted for a couple years until 5th edition came out. And then we just were like, "Oh, we'll try this new edition." And that one was like a lot easier to grasp, and a lot more people were interested in it. And then I've been DMing and running games ever since. So yeah.
Yeah, and I heard you say that nobody wants to DM Forgotten Realms for you because you're a know-it-all.
Yeah, no, it's true. I have a couple of DMs, and they've said specifically, they're like, "Yeah, I don't want to," which I'm like, I don't think I give that vibe off that I'm gonna be like, "Oh, actually," like, I'm like, whatever, it's your version of this. But yeah, so it's always been custom worlds and stuff, but then I get to run games in the realms, and so that's fun for me. So
So do you not get to play anymore? You're more DMing, or?
I DM mostly because I think I prefer to DM, but I do have a very consistent dungeon master. I'm gonna be playing later today, actually, in a Black Company homebrew world that he's created. I'm an artificer. We're level 8, and it's been a lot of fun because we're treating all of my spells as if I have like weird gadgets. So, which I really like. So I put on my like gauntlet, and then I can cast shocking grasp and things like that. And so, it's been fun to. I've never played an artificer before, or had an artificer really in a campaign, because players have never chosen it. We played in the Forgotten Realms, and it was just easier to be a wizard kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I'm having a lot of fun with it, kind of reinventing like what magic is in that world. So
yeah, I hear that artificer is the hardest one to run, and being like you, kind of a chosen forever DM. I wouldn't have a clue. They all look difficult to run for me because I'm not the one that does it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I really like the fact that, like, I heard on a podcast the other day, they were saying I have a glaive or whatever, but he described it in game as a katana, and it's black and it has these fire flames up it, and it's like, yes, players, you can just say I have a trident, but you can describe it how the hell you want, as long as it just does that damage. It's fine. It's D&D is just so hard to encapsulate in one thing. When someone says, "What is D&D?" It's like, oh my god, it's everything.
Yeah. No, it's fun. I've been taking like a game that I really enjoy, a non-D&D game, is called Kids on Bikes, and you play. It's kind of like Stranger Things, the RPG, where you're a bunch of kids, and there's a something weird happening in your city or town. And that could be like a werewolf or Dracula. Or I did one where it was a haunted house and they had to go there on Halloween. It's kind of been this fun game that I run a Kids on Bikes game every Halloween. And so we always pick a year, like 1992, and like what happened in Halloween. But the fun aspect of it, and something that my D&D players are always kind of shocked about, is they create the world with you. And so you start asking them questions like, what's a really important statue in the town? And they're like, I don't know. And like, it's this fun collaborative effort. And I've been taking those into my D&D games where, you'll say like, oh, you find this weird artifact on in the evil cult temple, and it's made of bronze, and it's this, but like, there's something weird about it. And you're like, Jenny, what's weird about it? Like, what would you say is weird about it? It doesn't really have to do anything with the story that I've created, but it allows them to add a piece to the world. And they'll do something like, oh, it's like missing its right hand. And you're like, oh. And then for the rest of the game, like, all of the leaders of the cult have their right hand missing because they're trying to emulate this artifact or something like that. And it's just fun, And then I take that and I'm like, oh, we're going to turn it into a big Hand of Vecna thing and it'll be fun. And so it really helps me be creative when my players get invested, and you just ask them simple questions and they'll get super invested. So
do you find what you want? Sure, you don't have this anymore, but because this channel's kind of based at mostly newbies of all ages, when you're DMing, how do you get newbies to play with each other, role play with each other? Because I find I'm describing, they're all sat silent, then I'll talk to one as an NPC, that's fine, but I don't get a chance often to sit back. I'm like, you are a party, you can talk to each other.
Yeah.
How do you instill that? Got any tips?
I guess I'm very lucky because I have a lot of players that are theater friends, and so they all kind of want to perform and stuff like that. I have DM'd at conventions and at my local game store, and then not only am I a stranger to them, but they're all strangers to each other, and it's difficult. Like, some people just feel more comfortable kind of sitting there, and I think part of me was feeling like maybe you're not having fun. And I need to fix that somehow. But then I would talk to them afterwards and they'd be like, that was so cool. Like, they like kind of being that fly on the wall. So I guess my suggestion is I don't have a good answer for that other than acknowledge that people play different ways. And I don't know, but I have done like, hey, what are you doing, specific player? And they're like, oh, I'm going to go do this. And then I'll turn to that other one and I'll say, you see him walking away from your bag, like something's missing, and not that player stole something, but just to get a little like, what are you doing over there? Oh, I'll talk. And you can instigate it a little bit, but forcing it is never the right choice.
Yeah, Yeah, I must say, I sometimes sort of say, right, to that player, I say, what are you feeling right now? What's your character thinking? And
Yeah.
it gets you so far, but it still doesn't spark that. And now I'm going to talk to all the other players. But they come out of the shell eventually, and like you say,
Yeah.
you just remind me of one of all you've said about an actor who got into it because I said you'll really love it. I mean, we've got that in our party, and yeah, he loves to act because surely acting just makes it so much easier. You have that interplay off other people, but then you get the kind of gamer who's a button masher who was just like with a sword, hits a sword, hits a sword, and that's what I think D&D is. It's like I'm just waiting to roll my d20 to hit a goblin, and it's like, well, no, it's more than that. You know, you don't just like sit there until that happens.
And sometimes those players just need a different game too. Because I have button mash players like that you said at my like they've made their build. They have their I do this one specific thing really well. I want to roll my d20 and cast fireball or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you get some other games where they're encouraged to be more creative, I guess, or and then just not care about their, I don't know, like I really like although this isn't a good game for role play, but Dungeon Crawl Classics is a game where it really encourages you to not get attached to your player or your character because it can die very quickly. And then to jump in with a new character. So suddenly you're like, okay, I'm here. How did you get here? I landed by an eagle. You're like, cool, let's go. And I don't know. And then when you don't take it seriously, I think people have more fun. And if you can laugh it off rather than like, oh man, he's just not role playing well. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering, have you written things? You seem like the kind of guy who would have. I know you've DM'd, but have you actually got?
Yeah.
Stuff?
I wrote I wrote a one shot because I had a lot of people coming to me and they were saying like, hey, how do I, this is way early in my Dungeons and Dragons career, but they're like, hey, you have these really cool lore videos. I want to get into D&D. Where should I start? Like, how do I pitch this to my friends? And so I made a one shot called Dragon on the Mount that I had ran in the past and play tested a bunch. And it's just this idea that there's a big dragon on top of this mountain. It sends a bunch of kobolds down into a town, and your adventure to ask for tributes basically to the dragon. And so the community has pooled all of their resources to say, hey, stop. We're going to, instead of using all of these resources to pay the dragon who's just going to come back again, we're going to pay adventurers to take care of the dragon. And you're level 4. There's really no way you can fight a dragon, but it has a fun twist at the end. And it covered all of the aspects of D&D I wanted to cover, which was like little encounters, a journey up the mountain, what that looks like, and then actually going through and discovering the dragon and stuff. So that's available for $1 on the DM's Guild, and you can buy that. And it's been really popular. I in hindsight, I didn't need to put it on the DM's Guild, but I was like, that seems like a fine place to post it. But yeah, so I put it up there for $1, and it's fun.
That's excellent.
Other than that, I've written a couple of other little things. I don't have anything really published, and right now I've gotten into game design. So I have a hack of a open D6 system that I'm kind of working on that's tentatively called modular D6, where I kind of like the idea of like a D6 dice pool and how to equate it to role-playing games that I want to play, I should say, like my style of gaming, which is usually pretty goofy and I like to do builds as well. And so it's kind of like that. And then, I don't know, always working on other little projects and then videos and stuff. So yeah. But,
so what have you got planned for your channel, or are you already at the level where you thought you dreamed, really?
Oh man. Well, no, I think dreaming it would be like, this could be my full-time job or something. That would be kind of fun, but I never got there. But I also have a family and I have other interests in my life and stuff. So yeah. But what's next for the channel is, I don't know. We have, you caught me at an interesting time because Wizards of the Coast is burning down their industry with the OGL that's coming out and lots of stuff happening. And a lot of Dungeons and Dragons content creators are trying to figure out what they're doing to move forward. in the immediate, I'm working on some Dark Sun videos because I realized that was a setting that a lot of people were asking me to cover, and I just had no real reference for it or why it was cool. So I ended up they're off screen, they're over there, but I ended up picking a bunch of Dark Sun books, and I was reading through those, and it's really interesting. And we'll see if Wizards of the Coast ever like reboots it for this version or the next version of Dungeons and Dragons. But it's kind of hard. For the most part, I've covered Planescape and Forgotten Realms and Eberron and things like that. And it gets to the point where there's always new stuff to make videos about, but it's like, how interesting or applicable is that for a dungeon master or a player? So it's like, oh, I'm going to make a Forgotten Realms video on this random town in the middle of nowhere that you're probably never going to go to. And I have made those videos in the past, and they're fun. But then it's like, people are like, I don't even know how this fits into a search algorithm. Like, why would anyone find this interesting? So I try to find topics that kind of spark something in me. Because if I'm excited and passionate about it, I hope that relays over in the video. So for right now, I'm working on some Dark Sun stuff. And then I have a second channel called Jordan's Jocular Junction, where I do a bunch of indie games and basically non-D&D RPG stuff. And so when I feel like I don't have a direction with my main channel, I go and make content for that one, because it's like, oh yeah, that's easy. I can sit in front and talk about, rolling pools of D6s, and that's fun.
Yeah. Now, you're saying like you have that other channel, but I think that people tune into your channel. Well, I can only speak for myself. I think when your video comes up, I feel compelled to watch it, and it's not necessarily for the content. You think you've been around long enough that it's like, oh, if he's got a new video out, I'm sure I'll be interested. It's a bit of that. Do you know what I mean? You can probably make it about anything.
Yeah, and that's awesome to hear. I've had some people tell me that. I think in hindsight, with the direction Wizards of the Coast is going, it would have been better to merge those two channels, like to just keep the one channel. And maybe I will in the future, but when I started making all that stuff, all signs pointed to, if this is turning into not a D&D channel, I will unsubscribe. And I was like, oh, okay, well, clearly they only want D&D content, so I'll make a second channel. And you see that a lot with people that do like Let's Plays and stuff. It's like, here's the main channel, and then I have like, here's the one where I play video games, which isn't really the best content to put on the main channel. And that was kind of the idea. But yeah, I don't know. The YouTube algorithm is fickle, and everyone tries to play it in a way where they're like, well, I think this is the right idea. And then you're like, probably wasn't the right idea, but I don't know. But it's kind of like, I think ideally I would like people to think of me as like, oh, I just like Jordan as a person. I want to watch his videos, as opposed to, oh, I'm here only for lore and only specifically Eberron lore, things like that. But yeah, who knows? I don't know.
How old was your channel?
I started it in 2017. So
Right.
February of 2017. So we're coming up on what, 6 years now? Because it'll be February 2023. And so yeah, I don't know. Like it's been a lot of fun. And at the time I was looking at YouTube, because I liked YouTube a lot and I watched YouTube a lot. And there were a lot of channels, and I was like, I kind of want to have a channel, not in a way to like make money. I just liked the idea of having something. And I love movies. So originally I'm like, well, I'll start like a movie review, and my niche will be like, I review like, I don't know, those weird movies I never got around to watching, but I always kind of wanted to watch. Had nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons, but I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, but I wasn't really thinking about it as a YouTube medium yet. And that did horrible. Like it was a bad channel, and a lot of people were just like, you know nothing about movies. And then I thought about it. I'm like, I really don't. I just like movies. And You're right. Who wants to watch somebody who just kind of like likes movies? So then I thought, well, what could I do to actually contribute something to YouTube, as opposed to being like, I think this was before TikTok, but like a TikTok star where you're like, hey, just watch me. I just want attention. I was like, what could I contribute? so that people find value in what I'm trying to do. And that's when I was like, well, I'm struggling as a DM with this. Maybe other people are. And then you start Googling, and I'm like, I didn't find any videos that were like about the Forgotten Realms. I found some videos about Dungeons and Dragons, but not a lot. And I said, I think this is kind of my niche. And so I started making videos. And I swear, I started uploading videos, and then there were like 3 or 4 other guys that started at the exact same time, the exact same idea. And there was never really a competition, but I think we all eyed each other for a long time until one of them, he just kind of stopped making videos, which I thought was really sad because I really liked the ones that he was making. And then AJ Pickett was the other one who kind of took off. So me and AJ, and we're friends. We became friends because we're like, we're doing the same thing. This is cool. You have your style, I have mine, and we cross promote a lot and stuff. Yeah. So me and AJ were the ones that kind of standed the test of time. And then later on, other people started making some videos as well. But I think it's important to realize it's not really a competition, because if somebody's watching somebody else's, like if somebody's watching AJ's videos, they're probably also going to find interest in my videos. Yeah. It's not like, oh, you're stealing views from me, which a lot of YouTubers, early YouTubers, I think they think that way. They're like, oh, this person's stealing views from me. And it's like, they're not. Like, if they're on YouTube, they're looking for D&D content. So
yeah, it's like going to the gym or working out or whatever, because everyone's got their own curve. It's like, you're on your own journey, and your only partner that you're battling with is yourself. Yeah.
And I just wanted to have fun. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I'll be successful if I do this, and they'll burn themselves out. And early on, I'm like, if I want it to be successful, I think I need to do a video a week, and I'm going to keep up with that. But ultimately, if something happens in my life, I'm not going to stress about this. And so I didn't. And I did a video a week for a long time. And it was really up until my son was born that I was like, I think I need to take a little break. And so I don't hit as many videos per month as I used to, because I have a kid now. But that's understandable, and it's okay because it's fun.
Yeah, I'm in that grind. I'm like video a week. And currently this month, I'm trying the whole 30 shorts in 30 days. And it's got both the effect of, you get spread more, but you do drop some subscriber because they're like, not him again, shut up.
Yeah. But I tried a 30-day world building challenge a couple years ago, and I was surprised how many subscribers left, because I think they see like yet another video, and they're like, I don't want to think about this guy anymore. Yeah. And like you said, it's a fine balance. Some people love that content. Other people are like, And so you can't make everybody happy, so don't try. Just make yourself happy.
Yeah. In your video recently, I saw that you put Tomb of Annihilation and Curse of Strahd high in your favourites, and then said you'd never run them. And literally, I'm running Tomb now, and we just finished Strahd, and it's like, have you run them yet?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I always find these. So it's one of my favorites, I think, because I love the Tomb of Horrors, and it plays off a lot of the Tomb of Horrors, Tomb of Annihilation. And we were just chomping at the bit for what Wizards of the Coast was going to release, like the new story. Like, I was like, oh man, what is it going to be? And there were subtle hints that it was going to be in Chult. And so I ended up making like a Chult video, and I released it. I think they announced that Tomb of Annihilation was going to be in Chult, and then I hit publish on my video like seconds after I was watching their live stream. And a couple people were just like, did you know about this? Like, what? Like, did you have inside information? I was like, never. I've never talked to Wizards of the Coast. Like, I just kind of was paying attention to clues, and I gambled. And so I like Chult a lot. I think it's this really cool kind of, I don't know, primal place. And I've read that adventure, I don't know, probably 3 times now, thinking I'm going to run it from start to finish at some point. And then I did run it at Adventure League for a little bit, but I never got to finish it. As with Adventure League, you have new players every night. It's kind of difficult to do a longer campaign like that. So I don't know, but I put it up as one of my favorites because I think it is one of my favorites. I just, you can enjoy something, you just haven't like run the whole gamut of it, I guess. So on a read level, I love it. But yeah, I'll run it one time. It's over there on my shelf staring at me. Yeah, that and Rime of the Frost Maiden. They're both like, play me.
Yeah. So right, just to hop into you yourself, other interests? What outside of D&D? Who are you? What are you into?
I like. Well, let's see. I do theater. I like to perform. I like improv, and so we do not traditional like improv-y shows, but it's kind of fun to do the long form stuff, which I think is partially why I like D&D as well, is because you get to like feed on things and go in different directions. I like to read, which is good because of the Forgotten Realms and stuff. And so a lot of my free time is reading. Lately, it's reading game books because I'm finding those more interesting. But yeah, like reading. And then I don't know, outdoor activities and biking and stuff like that, and just being a dad and being silly.
Yeah.
We like to make movies. Like I've made a couple short films here and there, which kind of feeds into the whole YouTube thing. And I guess I'll say like YouTube in general as a hobby, like that's kind of a fun thing that I would not keep doing if it wasn't fun. But we have a lot of local people that like to make dumb, silly little shorts and sketches and stuff. And so writing jokes for that, or performing in them, or operating a boom mic and just hanging out with your friends for a day to like record some silly thing in a, I don't know, like a abandoned restaurant somewhere. Like it's fun. So.
And is theatre your job?
Oh, no. It's totally a hobby. I went to college and I have a degree in performance, but I'm not fantastic. And so I have a day job where I just work in computers and things like that. So that's another thing. Like I like computers, and so I play video games, and I have a Steam Deck and I play that all the time, things like that. But I like tinkering and hacking in the sense of like taking something apart and making it do something it wasn't intended to do. So we have like a bunch of retro game consoles and Raspberry Pis around the house and stuff. So I'm always like messing around with things like that. So yeah.
So how much game products do you own? I see that behind you, but have you got drawers of minis? What's the deal?
I do. That thing up there is a bunch of minis, which I bought a few minis and terrain, but then WizKids like hooked me up. They sent me a bunch of stuff and they're like, here, review this. I'm like, oh, I'm not really a mini channel, but okay. And so they sent me a bunch of things. And then I have D&D on the top there. So I have most of the modules and books that I wanted. There's a few that I didn't get. I think it was like I can't remember. Anyway, there's a couple I don't have because I was just like, no, I don't think I'm ever going to run that. I don't know. Like I'm good. And then I've got bunch of third-party stuff from Kobold Press, which is really nice. And then I just got into other systems. So like I have a Pathfinder 2 ebook down there that I was just curious about. So I picked up Pathfinder and was reading. Kobold Press had a sale on their Midgard World setting book. And so I picked that up, which is kind of fun because I guess I like setting books a lot, which is probably the lore in me, because it's interesting to be like, oh, that's your take on this. Like, that's kind of cool. Like, Yuan-Ti are actually cursed people from a snake god or something like that. And so you can kind of, not that that's in Midgard, but like you could take a trope and change it into a different way. One of the things I like about Eberron is Keith Baker says anything that's in D&D is in Eberron. You just have to figure out a way to make it work, and it might not be what you normally think. So there are no tieflings by default in Eberron, but you could play a tiefling. It's just maybe you were cursed at birth, or maybe you are like a sign of some kind. Like, oh my gosh, whenever this purple-skinned devil is born, we know that the end of the world will happen in 20 years or something like that. And so now this kid's all grown up, and it's like, So I like that, and looking at other world books and stuff like that is a fun thing to do. So, and then I got into Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I've got a bunch of other little RPGs. Like I said, I'm trying to write one, and I think the more that I was trying to write, the more I'm like, well, how does this system do this? And so then I would go and buy that system and read through it, or people would pitch me something at Gen Con, and I'd be like, well, now I got to buy your book. That just looks really cool.
Yeah. I just recently reached out to quite a few creators, Kickstarters and things like that, and they've been great enough to send me their products before it's out to look at.
Cool.
And I'm gonna do a little advert, and I'm gonna get them on like I get you on, and we're gonna chat about it. And that's all I'm for, really. I just want to soak it all in. Do you know what I mean? And because I'm small, I'm really in the mindset of you're small, and we can help each other out. You know, people like you are like the giants to us. Do you know what I mean? I know you, but you know.
No, I love to collaborate. Like, so yeah, I mean, hit me up. Like,
Yeah, cool. It's like
so, but no, it's cool. Like, there's so much good stuff out there, and so I think it's awesome that you're doing things like that, where you're like, yeah, let's just talk about it. Like,
yeah.
I haven't reviewed it yet, but somebody gave me an Old School Essentials zine that was like in the style of Super Mario Brothers or something. You're like plumbers and you're trying to like stop a bunch of stuff, but it uses the Old School Essentials things. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. Like, and how many people know about that? Like, not enough, I'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly. You've not mentioned Call of Cthulhu at all. Have you dipped into that?
I haven't. So a friend of mine was like, you got to play Call of Cthulhu. So he bought it for me, but I have not played it ever. And I read through it and I really like the idea. And after he got me that, I actually bought a like Lovecraft anthology, because I'm like, I don't think I've ever read Lovecraft, you know?
Yeah.
And so I went through and I read a couple of the stories and really enjoyed it. But it's one of those things where I want to find somebody who loves Call of Cthulhu and have them run me a game, you know? And so rather than it's like, well, Jordan, this is what Jordan thinks Call of Cthulhu should be like. It would be really fun to have someone who like loves the mythos and things like that. And I'm not necessarily holding out for that. I just have lots of other games.
Yeah.
But I do own, they had a Kickstarter for like the original Call of Cthulhu game reprinted. And I was like a sucker. I'm like, well, that sounds amazing. And so it was like the original box set, but it's a brand new reprint of it. So everything's new and nice and a bunch of modules that came with it. So if I ever want to run it, I could run that. But I don't typically do horror. And even in my even in Ravenloft games or other games that I've run, and I think the most horror I ever get is running my Kids on Bikes Halloween games, and those turn into silly like Scooby-Doo type of episodes.
Yeah, I saw that you were running. You were DMing for Nerd Emerging. I mean, that's pretty cool. When did you reach out to him?
Yeah, Ted and I have been friends for a while through the YouTube spheres. We met at Gen Con and just kind of like hung out. And I think it was just like a click. You're like, oh, you're cool. Hey, you're cool. And so like we chat quite a bit. And then we were talking about like, well, hey, I should run a game. And he's like, yeah. And one of the things about streaming I hate is if I'm the DM, I don't want to operate all of the Zoom stream stuff. Like it's too much to like try and DM and then to try and also, oh, we're dropping frames. I don't know what's going on. So Ted was like, well, I want to play. Do you have an adventure that you want to run? And there's a classic adventure called The Rod of Seven Parts from 2nd edition that I really like. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to run that. And I'll make it 5th editionified. I'll make it on the fly and we'll set it in the realms. It'll be really fun. And so we got a bunch of our friends together and played through The Rod of Seven Parts, which was really fun. We took a couple years off, I think, just everybody was busy. And then what I'm currently running now is he came back, him and Lex, another one of my players, Nerd Immersion and Lex, and they were like, well, we want to keep playing. Like, we like those characters. Like, we don't want to play new characters. We want to play the same ones. Like, what do you want to run next? And I was like, oh, well, there's another game I like called The Great Modron March. We could try that. And he's like, oh, okay. And so The Great Modron March is actually for lower levels, but it's kind of fun because it's a Planescape adventure. And so I can change it however I want, really, and put in applicable challenges if I need to. But the core mystery is still there. The idea is that Modrons march every 217 years or something. And they started their march 50 years early, and nobody knows why. And they're like, Modrons, I've never done this before. So that's what I'm currently running on Nerd Immersion's channel, and it's a lot of fun. And then I don't have to control all of the dials and stuff, and I can just run a game, and it's fun. So
Do you prefer like theatre of the mind or minis, or what's your ideal?
Yeah, depends on the game. I like the tactical combat of D&D. If I'm doing other games, like I'm running a Dungeon Crawl Classics game on every other Sunday, and I tried minis once with that group, but they just found it like, which one am I? Like they were kind of they weren't as interested in it, and so we are strictly theater of the mind now, and they love that. They're just kind of like, I'm like, how far? Those questions of like, how far away are you? And I'm like, what do you want to do? And I'll say if you're close enough, kind of a thing. Like, oh, I think you're gonna have to be closer than that or something. And so for the Nerd Immersion game, I didn't want to use minis because I just feel like that detracts a lot from the speed of combat, of like stopping and getting a virtual table out and stuff. So we just kind of do that. But then the game I'm playing tonight, the 5th edition game that my Dungeon Master's running, we're very into minis. He likes to paint minis. He likes to build terrain. And so it's a very tactical kind of game. So just different, I guess. But the performative aspect of D&D when I'm streaming a game, I think I prefer Theater of the Mind, because a lot of times people are listening to it as a podcast anyway, and then you're not really helping them by saying like, oh, well, yeah, the guy there. And they're like, well, what guy? Where? Like,
yeah. So you've hit on two things there. First one, quicker one. Are you into Warhammer? Because that's very much painting minis and stuff.
Yeah, I've never played. I have a couple friends that are into it, or were into it and got out because they're like, oh, it's kind of expensive and I'm busy now. But no, I've never played Warhammer. So, and I'm not a big mini painter person. I did buy some paints, and we've 3D printed a couple things, and I'll paint here and there, but my DM loves it. Like he's got 3D printers and he makes all kinds of stuff. That's his, when I'm not playing D&D, I'm going to think about D&D by building things. And so he really likes that. For me, when I'm not playing D&D, I'm usually like writing something or plotting or reading a book to get inspired. So,
well, my second question was, you mentioned Planescape, and I have no clue what Planescape is. I know it's coming, so can I have the Jordan line?
Oh, boy, yeah. So whoa, sales pitch for Planescape. Yeah. So Planescape is from AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, back in the day, and it was kind of this idea of kind of like Spelljammer was also an idea of let's unify all of the different worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, the Forgotten Realms and Eberron and Kryn of Dragonlance and things. Like we have all these different like settings, but is there a setting that we can combine them all, like a transient setting, like a liminal space setting, for lack of a better word. And that was Planescape. And so Planescape is the idea of the Great Wheel cosmology in Dungeons and Dragons, where you have all of the gods reside in these planes that are along the Great Wheel. And the Great Wheel also follows the law, good, chaos, evil kind of alignments are on that wheel as well. So you'll have Celestia, Mount Celestia, which is like a lawful good place up here. And then you'll have Hades, or the Nine Hells, which is like a lawful evil place down here. And in the middle of this great wheel is this disc called the Outlands. And the Outlands is just this place to go from, if I leave Mechanus, which is like the law, plane of existence, I guess we'll say that. If you leave Mechanus, there's a gate that will take you to the Outlands. And then literally it's just like, well, I can walk 10 miles to the Nine Hells because it's right there. And so it's this finite place that allows you to go to any of the other planes of existence. Okay. And at the center of the Outlands is a spire that goes up an impossible amount high. And on top of that spire is a big donut. And that donut is Sigil. And I don't know if you've heard of Sigil, but Sigil is this big city that's kind of important to Planescape because Sigil is the hub of the Great Wheel. It's the very center of the multiverse. So from Sigil, the idea of Sigil is that there are doors to everywhere. It's called the City of Doors. So I could take a door to go to the Forgotten Realms. I could take a door to go there. So that is kind of like, if you can make your way to Sigil, then you can go anywhere from there. And so the Great Modron March is a Planescape adventure, and Planescape adventures usually just mean a lot of traveling from plane to plane, and based on your alignment and the plane itself, you might be super powerful in a certain plane and super weak in others. Like lawful characters really enjoy being in a lawful plane of existence, but chaotic characters are like, I feel off, this is weird. And so it's kind of just a way to do that. And it's also the afterlife. Like, what happens when you die, when your character dies in the Forgotten Realms? Well, Planescape was a way to cement the afterlife. So when you go to Mount Celestia, you'll be like, oh, the god Bahamut is there in Mount Celestia. And here are all the people that worship Bahamut, and they died a normal, good life, but their afterlife is being here on this plane with their god. And you're not necessarily dead, but you can talk to these people. They're called petitioners, and you kind of interact with them and get information and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, so that's Planescape. It's a really cool setting. Like a lot of lore, a lot of history, and there's so much information because there's like 16 different planes or something. Like it's a big wheel of stuff. And then the Outlands, it's its own thing, and it's really cool. So,
how good are you with the knowledge of the Great Wheel? Because that's the one page I'm like, there's a lot to take in there.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I have a whole video series on all the Great Wheel and all the stuff. So, but yeah, it's I don't know, it makes a lot of sense now. But the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide kind of has like a little like blip on it. But there are older books. Like if you're into D&D lore, don't look at 5th edition. Really, you should go back to some of the early 90s stuff when TSR was putting out lots of books. But there's books called like Manual of the Planes that has. I think I probably have a book somewhere, but like Manual of the Planes that has information on all the different planes of existence and how players interact with them and what to expect and stuff if your players travel there. So
yeah,
kind of cool.
You mentioned something on a video recently as well about it made me think, are there books that go more into detail on the factions, the Harpers, the Zentarim? Because like you said, you think you mentioned joining the Zentarim, and it's like, wow, where are those adventures?
Adventures, I'm not sure, but like there were lots of Forgotten Realms novels that involve the Harpers being like the good guys and joining the Harpers. And I think the new Dungeons and Dragons movie that's going to come out soon, I think Chris Pine's character is a Harper. And so he's going to be like part of this organization for good. But yeah, you're right. There were little splat books here and there. It takes a lot of digging to kind of find a lot of that information. But I will say that if you watch my videos and you're like, wow, I want to know more about that, I have been very meticulous on putting links to all of the PDFs that I reference in a video. So you could always go to not the comments, but the description of the video and find links to go like, oh, he found this information on this PDF. So I want to learn more about the Zentarum. Maybe I could pick that up. But traditionally, the Zentarum were like this evil, they were just a big bad, I guess. They were just an evil organization, and the Harpers were kind of like the organization that was opposed to them. And then I think around 4th or 5th edition, they were like, hey, what if we make this a faction that you can join for Adventure League? And they kind of changed how it worked a lot. So that's how you're like, oh, I can become a Zentarum now, because back in the day, it's like, no, they were the super evil people and you were on the side of good. But now it's more like leadership has changed. They're more about financial stability rather than other stuff. And so the Zentarum are kind of different. But to answer your question, sorry, novels. There's lots of early novels. And then usually there's little like splat books here and there about like, this is the current leader of the Zentarum and this is what he wants. And so.
Yeah. Okay. So you know so much, it's quite unbelievable. But Spelljammer, did you get the new Spelljammer?
I did, yeah.
I'm going to have that run for me for a change very soon. So that will kind of be my first actual game, really, proper campaign as a player. Now, did you play original Spelljammer, and what's the difference?
No, I didn't play original Spelljammer. I was very tickled, I guess, like by the idea of it, like wizards in space. I'm like, oh, that's just hilarious. Like, of course I want to play that. Like, that sounds so much fun. And the original Spelljammer, a lot of what TSR did was kind of overboard, which is fun for me because I love having all of this information on like weird things in a campaign setting. But from a financial selling point, it's like, oh, we're not going to sell that many books, and this is a lot of work, kind of a thing, which I think is why TSR failed in the end and Wizards of the Coast bought them. But original Spelljammer was kind of like Planescape. It was the idea of like, could I leave the Forgotten Realms and travel to like Kryn of Dragonlance or something like that? It was the idea that the world, the universe is bigger than that. And so the original Spelljammer, you would fly your spelljamming ship using magic, and you would come to really the edge of the universe. Like solar systems were encased in something called a crystal shell, and you had to cast a spell to open a portal through that shell and then go into something called the phlogiston, and then fly blind for however long until you find another crystal shell, open a hole, and go through. So the biggest difference, I would say, between that one and 5th edition is that they kind of got rid of the idea of these crystal shells and the phlogiston, and instead they're mixing it with the astral plane or the astral sea. So the further you fly away from a planet, the more you'll drift into this like endless misty ocean, which is like the astral plane, the astral sea. And then from there, you need to navigate by, I don't know, stars or something weird to actually find another plane of existence. But the idea is pretty much the same. Like you're leaving one planet and going to another. But it's cool. Like there's weird factions in Spelljammer, and there's like, I don't know, like entire ships of beholders and illithids that are flying around out there. It's very dangerous, and I don't know, it's kind of cool. And so, and there's no air. So there's a lot of weird rules about like how much air you have, and a lot of times your spell jamming vessel has to like dip down into a planet to kind of refresh its oxygen and then fly back up. So if you want to play like a more gritty campaign, like you kind of could, you know, like, hey, you guys are running out of air, like what do you want to do and stuff. Yeah. But it's fun. I like Spelljammer a lot, and I have been wanting to run a Spelljammer game, and I was very excited when 5th edition Spelljammer came out. I was kind of sad that it wasn't as lore rich as I wanted it to be, and I was sad that they didn't have a lot of the because there was a whole mini game in the original one that was ship combat, and like you had to be on your stations on the ship and actually like attack other ships coming at you or try to run away. And they got rid of a lot of that with 5th edition, I think, to make it more approachable. But it's sad because there's people like me that want that. So you're like, But I ended up writing my own Spelljammer rules to make it work for 5th edition. So if you want those, they're also on the DM's Guild. And I was like, I'm going to make my own stuff because Wizards of the Coast isn't doing it for me, kind of a thing. But yeah, that's cool. I'm jealous. That's awesome. That sounds fun. Yeah, what are you going to play?
I did. What am I going to play? I think I chose Thri-kreen, the like mandible and 4 arms. I'm like, 4 arms? That sounds good.
Heck yeah. What class though? Do you know?
I think a barbarian, because in my channel I just went from B. I did bards, and I thought bards do seem to suck. You know. Now I'm learning by making the videos, just like you did the lore. So I got to barbarian, and I'm like, this has got a lot of things that my players, when they play barbarians, obviously aren't aware of. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do whatever I play first will be a barbarian, and I'll just play that class, and then I'll move on to something else if I ever get a second chance. But with Spelljammer, I did videos on as those free little campaigns came out before Spelljammer Big came out. There was like a quick adventure.
Yeah, those little ones are fun that are on the D&D like Beyond.
Yeah, like you say, the Beholder asteroid things, and it's like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of big, scary, kind of like, you know, huge things, and then just weird things that you never thought of. Like in original Spelljammer, like if you had the right protections, you could land your ship on the sun, and then you'd find all these weird fire elementals that are there, and you're like, what the, you know? And the original Spelljammer had all of these tables to roll random solar systems. You could just roll up all of these weird solar systems and then go go visit them. And you're like, I don't know what's there. Oh yeah, a bunch of weird plant people. Like, let's go say hi to them. And you can kind of make your own Star Trek show. And I like that. Like every week we're going to visit a new planet. What's it going to be? So.
Yeah, but it is very planet based. It's just like normal D&D. Travel is an empty void of space.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, to get from A to B, what do? Shoot asteroids? I mean, once you've done that, what? It's like, you're like, I don't know what you do.
Yeah. No, and it's transitive. Like I was saying, like it's Planescape was kind of the same way. It's like, well, a lot of that is travel. Like I have to get to this other place to have an adventure there. But I don't know. That's D&D is half the fun is how do you get there? So.
Yeah. Okay. So I watched your video about villains, and that was a while ago. Yeah. But villains are like the best thing about D&D out there. And as a DM,
it's the player for the DM, or the character the DM gets. So they're fun.
Yeah, I know people say about being a forever DM, but I'm like, I get to play all week long. You play on a Saturday with me, but every night I'm prepping and writing. So the DM's be the best bet.
Yeah, I love being a DM, and I think playing is fun. But if I had to pick one, I would definitely, being the DM is more fun. And it's not for everybody, but I would say more people should try it because you'd be surprised at like how invested you get and how what a creative fulfillment it can be to just run a game. So
yeah. So to end with about villains, I was getting to the point that with that being the best, being the DM's the best and having a villain, do your villains generally get to play out how you want? Because mine just end up dead so quick.
No, they never really do. I think Strahd is probably the best villain to use in a like if you want to play a villain, and it's because that adventure, Curse of Strahd or Ravenloft in general, Strahd toys with the players a lot, and he'll appear early and then leave and kind of things like that. But if you have this like, I've built up my guy, the players rush in, they're going to want to defeat him. They're going to throw everything they have at him. And then he's like gone forever is kind of the thing that can kind of suck, And so it's more fun when you get to have the villain appear earlier. And so with some of my campaigns, I've been trying to do that where it's like they either can talk to them or maybe the villain can like astral project something. And so it's like, oh, they can see him and they can talk to him, but they can't necessarily like, kill him. And so a lot of that is something that I've used. And then also lieutenants. A lot of times I'll be like, he's the big bad, but you don't know that, this guy, like, I don't know. You don't know that Vecna's the big bad, but this drow lady is the one that you're like currently fighting with. Well, she has a person that she reports to. And so when they kill them, I can still keep that chain going, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah. I know when my players met Strahd, because part of the campaign, as you say, is dinner with Strahd. They get an invitation when they're quite early on. My God, I've never seen my players be so passive and so well behaved and not saying witty comments. They were like, okay, yes, Mr. Strahd.
We can all die right now.
So that was really, really cool. Well, Jordan, what an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Hey, this was great. Thank you. This was super fun.
And everyone, check out your channel. And your second channel, remind me of the title.
Oh, Jordan's Jocular Junction. So if you search Jocular Junction, it's kind of a long name. I don't know. I thought it was fun. But yeah, or if you go to my main channel, there's a link. If you go to youtube.com/Jordan with a PH, JORPHDIN, in the like channels I like area, you'll see a little J3, and that's Jordan's Jocular Junction. So yeah.
Yeah. I have subscribed. I just haven't yet watched.
Oh, there you go. Check it out.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.